has offered to do a demonstration. But Trey, if you're ready, let's go.
Okay. What we're going to talk about tonight is how do I attach, taking a finial and attaching it to something. So that's what we're going to talk about individually. I'll show you several different ways of doing it. I'm going to cover up things that are, okay. And I'll cover up the stuff on my, the first one is a large sea urchin. And I'm going to turn a little tenon in there to make it fit into the bottom, and use like a 16th or an 1/8 inch drill dowel between the two. And I'll show you how I do that. Here's an example of one that I've done. I'll show you what I mean by having it fit that way. What? Oh, sorry, wrong item. That wasn't a sea urchin. This is a sea urchin. When I turn things to make them match to a certain size, I put them in a little Ziploc bag to keep them together. But if you can see the way that little tenon is on there to make it fit, and that fits into the bottom of the ornament. And I do the same thing on the top. And I'll show you exactly how I do that quickly. I've got one on turn for you. And I have a green shell. Perfect. I don't see the one I was going to do, but I'll just grab another one. Oh, here it is. I was going to put this finial on the bottom of this ornament. Now, with this tenon on there that I've done in the past, I can rechuck it in here, and it stays on center for me to finish the bottom up. Now I'll take a caliper, and I'm going to measure just a tad over the center of that small hole in the middle, if you can see where I'm doing on there. That's the size that I'm shooting for to get this part in here. That's the size I'm trying to fit in there. Size on it. Remember, this diameter that I'm coming to is the diameter of the largest diameter. So. Okay. Let's give me the big diameter that I have for the outside of it. Now I'll bring this down to the side to get it in there. Do it lightly with some sandpaper. Now the next dimension I need to check is this inside dimension. And I'll check it. Again, I'll do the same thing with the caliper and bring this down to it. Get started. On these calipers, I've rounded the tips off on them, and I've also flattened them out a little bit further here, so it'll fit inside. It was too wide, and it wouldn't fit inside the small. Okay. And still need to come down just a little bit more. But with that tenon on there, I can go back onto it real easy. Recenter it. And there I have the little finial on the bottom of it. And I use E6000 glue to attach them. The next one we'll look at is the small sea. Let's see if I can just get this in here. It's going to be a small sea urchin. And on them, I put about a 45-degree taper on them when I make the pieces up to them. And I do that because the other one's just too small to go otherwise. And again, an example. Here's what I've done with that. It's got a 45-degree taper on it, and that fits in as measured to that slot size. And the top is done exactly the same way. When I put this one together, I will put a toothpick. I will drill a little small hole in here, and it's somewhere around a number 45 drill bit, I think works in the toothpick, but measure and check it. And I'll take a toothpick and measure that to match it. And I have one let's see. I'll have that on another chuck.
Hey, do you process the hole at all? Do you sand the inside of the hole in the sea urchin itself?
Yes, I do. I round the hole off.
Could you show us how that's done too?
Okay.
Thank you.
Toss on top of that. Sometimes the extrusions or the little bumps are too large to be around the hole. Flatten them out works sometimes.
Also, if you could describe how you went and made the holes, how you drilled the holes in the shell.
Well, the shells already have the holes in them.
For the larger sea urchins, I've cut a little wedge shape on the lathe. I've used sticky tape and coarse sandpaper and enlarged the hole. For the smaller diameter holes, I have taken, and I didn't have one handy right there, I've got a grinder, just a stone grinder that fits onto a drill. And I've shaped it, I bought it as a 45, or I've turned around and ground it off and finished reshaping it so it'll fit the small hole in the top. And that gives me a perfectly round hole to fit things back into. Then I also take a little grinder, or you can take a little pocket knife and trim some of the bumps off around the edge of it.
Thank you. I've also used a Dremel to trim off the bumps if you need to.
Well, that's what I actually used to do that with. But.
Okay.
Okay. We'll fit this one to a small sea urchin shell.
Would you hold up that sanding thing that you made again?
Sure.
Now, don't be copying that. It might be proprietary.
No, it's nothing more than a wedge shaped, and sandpaper's cut. It's just a wedge taper, double-sided tape, and stick some coarse sandpaper on it. It's probably 150 grit sandpaper, so maybe 100. It's a little coarser.
Looks like you got a tenon on it too. Do you put it in a chuck and do it on the lathe?
Well, I turned it on the lathe to start with to get the shape.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. I found out it's just as easy to put to when you're doing it to just do it by hand instead of try to do it under power.
Proud to bet those sea urchins don't normally like heat.
Well, you get a little vibration, which is not good either. So.
Yeah, they're fragile and brittle, and they break.
Yes. Now this one here, I am going to measure. I need that 45. I'm gonna measure just a little bit bigger on that because that's gonna be my big size. I'll bring that diameter back down because that's the big size that I want. Put a 45 on it. And part it off. And that gives me the, I don't know which side I did on this side here. That gives me the little finial, match the finial back to the ornament. For the little sea urchin ornaments.
That's the idea.
I got to credit Mark Soleil on that one.
I wake up Mark and let him know.
Totally aware.
The next one I'm going to do is going to be small globes. And in that, I have a 1/4 inch hole through the center of it. And the way I turn them, this is how I turn them. I don't think I need to turn one for you, but it's simply I drill a 1/4 inch hole in the block of wood, put it on a pin mandrel, and turn the shape. So to make those fit, those pretty much universally fit. Pretty much any of them. I've got a bag of them. And they'll pretty much fit any of the ones that I've done. They just go slip in there. Any shape or size, that hole's a little tight, but it'll fit that one. And they just universally fit with what I've done with it. The key is I have a 1/4 inch hole and I have a 1/4 inch shaft that I'm hooking it up to. And I had.
You said it was a pen mandrel. Is that a 1/4 inch shaft on that?
Yes, it is. I think all of them have 1/4 inch shafts.
I'm embarrassed not to know that, but.
I'm gonna pull this off real quick and.
While you're setting it up, I'm going to mention that this evening, folks, hi, I'm Captain Eddie Castle and your moderator. We have Doug Rowe in training to be a host because I'll be away next week. And Doug's going to pick up the ball and run with it. It's an Army thing. He'll try. But Doug's going to have it next week and take care of things. And tonight, when we go back to gallery, if you got something to show, type into the chat room that you have something to show. And Dane is taking care of it. Dane out in Tucson is handling putting the gallery together. They'll get you linked up between him and Martin over in England. Yes, Martin's in England. And between the two of them, they get you linked up, get you on the air and let you show your piece. And now it looks like we're back looking at this gorgeous finial, just taking care of one.
Okay. And okay, I'll give you a better view of it. Okay, now what I'm gonna use is a wrench to measure that diameter. I've ground the edges off. I've tapered it down, make it smaller so it'll fit inside the hole easier. And this finial I left on the chuck to make sure it recenters. Then I'll undercut it a little bit because it's going onto a round vessel. And that's the finial, and grab one of these. That's a little tight, but I can work it, it'll work in. Okay, and let's see what else we got next. I got a couple more, but I may not show everyone. Okay.
Right, if you use a wrench there's a pattern for modifying an open-end wrench to have it slice a tenon.
I don't use it to slice a tenon. I know you could sharpen the top of it and make it work that way, but I do not do that.
Okay.
The next one, that's my small hollow form. The larger hollow of a globe, the larger is actually a hollow form, and I use a 1/2-inch hole when I go into them. And let's see, I'm back off on this one. I use a 1/2-inch hole going into it. So that means just like that other finial, and I probably don't have to really turn this one for you, but I'll show you how one fits. You pretty much have seen what it looks like. I lose my piece of paper. Yeah, I did.
Trez, we've just got a question on the timber that you're using for your finials. I'm assuming it's the black timber that you're using. What wood is it, please?
That is ebony.
It is ebony. That's okay.
I'm using ebony. I found a source of it that I bought from a company that does for musical instruments, and they come in. This is what they come as.
So they're already round.
They're already round cylinders. They're about 6.5 inches by 7/8 of an inch, already as a round cylinder. And they were very high quality wood because they were for instruments.
Yeah.
And this was actually the cheapest I could find. I've broken out from blackwood, so I try not to use blackwood too often. I've got a lot of it and I use some of it, but I don't use it too often. But this one here, I won't actually turn it. I'll just show. This is a globe. I've dyed it, 1/2-inch hole, and I back cut it just like I did before with the 1/4 inch. And that just slips in there and it'll fit on there. I'll make sure they fit. And the top is done the same way. And I just glue this together. Of course, I'll shorten that up before I glue it up, but that's the way I do it.
Trez, one of the other questions on there is, are they hollow? Are the finials turned hollow? I'm assuming they're not if you're turning them on a pen mandrel.
The smaller globes are not hollow, but the diameter is small already, so they're not that big. Well, you see it better on the mandrel because you can get a better size on it. Here's some different globes of what we're looking at on those. And they're pretty small, and with a 1/4 inch hole, you'd be fighting it to try to actually hollow them out. The bigger ones are turned.
So sorry, Trez, I'm assuming
these are turned and hollowed. Now, what was the question? Go ahead.
Just sorry, with the smaller globes, I'm assuming the question's being asked because people would think that they're fairly heavy. So if I certainly don't know what wood you've been using there because I only recognise one of them, but I'm assuming if you use a lighter timber, you're not going to get the weight, especially if the globe is quite small.
No, most of the timbers that I'm using, or most of the woods I'm using, sorry, you started to get me going. Most of the woods I'm using are fairly light for the on those.
Yeah. So you wouldn't want to be using something like a blackwood, you know, an African blackwood, something that's really dense.
I generally wouldn't think I'd want to use a globe out of blackwood anyway, because it's just, unless you lose it, there's nothing there. But no, I probably wouldn't. I've got some. I've used some oak though. I made some out of oak, and that's pretty hard. Okay, I got a couple more that I wanted to show.
And I'll just jump in and relay the information on this wrench. It's definitely a spanner for us UK guys that are over here, and I know there's 3 or 4 of us now. But that wrench is definitely a spanner.
Yes, it's a wrench, and I ground the points off of it so it won't grab on the lathe, and I thinned it out. I thinned it out to make sure it would go inside of the where I'm cutting my slots, so make it fit. Previously, it's just too wide.
That's great. I'll do the subtitles in the chat.
Okay. Next one I'm going to do is a little finial on the bottom of a birdhouse. And it is very similar to the other. Yes. I do birdhouses. But a little 1/4 inch, they're little 1/4 inch finials, and these will fit on pretty much, I picked one that was a little big, but this will fit on pretty much any of them. And that one's just tight. And that one maybe loosen another one. And they're just different shapes and stuff on them, designs, and so that's the way I put the finial on for the little birdhouses. We'll show birdhouses later on how I actually make them, but I turn a bunch of finials and turn a bunch of birdhouses, and then I mate them up afterwards. I'll pick it up and look at it and say which one looks good.
What glue do you use?
For those finials, I would just use a white glue for the birdhouse, little birdhouse finials. I use a lot of E6000 glue for items, especially if I have any gap to fill. And the last one's an inside out, and I'm doing it with the 1/4 inch hole just like I'm doing the other. The only difference is that this shoulder, depends on how it fits in there. I measure that shoulder diameter just like I would on the little small sea urchin ornament or something. I'll measure that to make sure it mates up. And I do that on some of the small globes. I have the same issue on some of them. But here is a inside out ornament and finial. And you can see where I've got that diameter to match the size. I'll run a caliper on it, calibrate this, and again with the little 1/4 inch hole using the wrench or spanner to go into it.
Nice. I like that.
Are there any questions or anything y'all want to add to for this week?
I think I've covered them all, Tres. Thank you.
What do you like about the E6000 glue?
What I like about it, it doesn't run. Basically, it's just a silicone glue. It doesn't run when you put it on. It stays put, and it will fill gaps, especially on stuff like sea urchin shells and stuff. They'll fill the gap in between the wood and the shell. You also have the ability to remove it if you need to. You can take a knife and cut in there and open it up and separate it. I tried epoxies. In fact, I messed a whole bunch of ornaments up with epoxies, I put it up there, let it cure, but the epoxy ran all over everything. Afterwards, you know, an hour later, I went out there and looked at it, or the next day I went and looked at it and had epoxy run all over the place. So it moved and moved away from it. So I've gotten to the E6000 because it stays in place. It's clear. It dries clear. And because it dries clear, it's you know, you don't really see it on there.
It's also more flexible than the epoxy. So if you're doing in sea urchins, there's going to be a movement between the two.
Yes.
This part,
You ever tried Tight Bond molding glue?
Tide Bond, what kind of glue?
Molding glue. It's real thick.
Okay. Okay, I haven't tried that.
I have used that a
E6000,
number of times. I've
yeah, E6000 is readily available. I can pick it up from Walmart here. So,
okay.
and I go through and do that.
And it comes in really small tubes too, or large tubes, depending on your need.
Yes, it does.
I think it's great. I use it on shop sanding mandrels. It's a great glue. I love that E6000.
And when I do like the ornaments, like the sea urchin ornament, when I'm gluing the top and bottom, I'll glue the top on, let it sit there and cure out. Then I've already drilled the little hole in the top and bottom. I will turn it upside down, stick the toothpick or dowel in there, measure it, cut it off, check the fit, and then I'll try, you know, put the E6000 on both the toothpicks, on the toothpick and everything, stick it in there. And then I stick it on top of a piece of PVC coupling. And that holds it up in the right direction I need for it to dry out, to finish curing. I use a whole bunch of PVC couplings in the magnitude of 4 or 5 dozen at a time when I'm using them. And I'll have the whole table full of them.
Hey, Trey,
Yes.
can you show us that E6000?
I will.
About this in the last couple of weeks.
I will show you next week because I'm in my shop and that's in the house.
Okay.
One other thing, I know we're not supposed to be talking about tools and stuff, but this chuck right here is my favorite chuck for turning tenants and stuff. I've looked around and I've looked.
Right.
Yes.
It's okay if we talk about them. What we want to avoid is somebody saying, if you don't have this, you can't do that.
Oh, no.
That's what we love people to tell us what they're using, how it works, and why they use it. And I know what you're going to tell me on this one because I got it.
Well, okay. I tried to use this chuck here to do it. And what happened was these, I'm getting the right, losing the jaw set flexed on me. So when that jaw set flexed, it came out of the jaws. If you go to the other chuck, here would be my next option, and it doesn't flex, but it puts me close up to the chuck when I'm working on it. One way, and the large one-way chuck, the jaw set that they have for the jaws that go out also flex. They're light duty and they flex. And when the jaw flexes, it loosens up the piece and the piece will come out. This jaw set is a heavy set. It does not flex. I can put something in here at the tip on it. I can grab something, right there at the tip and tighten it down, and it's not going to flex. I didn't get it straight, but it won't flex on me when I tighten it down. And it holds that steady. It's a small Vicmar chuck.
Gotcha.
Okay, it's a small size Vicmar chuck with the jaws that stick out. The smaller chucks work better for the finials and stuff, just because you're dealing with smaller stuff and small lathe. But I do, after looking at chucks for several years, and I bought several different ones and everything else, this is the one I've actually wound up going to. One Way does not have a good set of a jaw set to get you out from the chuck for small stuff. And I've talked to the company for the last 3 or 4 years, every time they show up at Waco, and they still don't have a set out. So Vicmar does have a set, and they do have a set for this one, and it works very well. The only thing on Vicmar that I fought for years on it, and this one works, is a way to lock it, is a set screw. Vicmar used a different method to keep the stuff from backing out, and this particular one, I was able to drill it and put a set screw in it to lock it in. So when I could do that, I actually bought this one. So Vicmar is not perfect either, but
Do they call those pin jaws, Trey?
Right?
I don't know what they call them.
I think they do. I have several of those chucks, and I like them very much.
Yeah, I've got the Nova version of that and like it also.
The Nova chuck on the extended jaws do not will flex a little bit. They still are not tightened. They still have some flex if you grab something at the very end of it. And I've actually bent some of the one-way jaws, tightening it down. The jaw is actually permanently bent. So
That's a big Mark 100.
I think it's a small one, which is I guess the 100. It's not marked.
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
it's 100.
it's a VM 100.
Yes.
Yeah, and on the VM 120, they have the pin jaws, and they only have 2 jaws, but they're even stronger and hold better than the 3 jaw in the other.
Well, I may have to try that. I got a couple of those, but I use it downstairs in my big lathe. I don't use it in a small. I do most of my turning up here on this small lathe.
Nova calls those long nose jaws.
Yep.
Okay. Trey, look, we really appreciate what you've done for us tonight. It's another great lesson. We'll see you again next week, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
And for all you guys that have said something about the messiness in my shop, look over his shoulder right now and don't ever talk to me about it again.
Hey, this is neat. This is neat compared to normal.
Yeah.
That's not messy. It's organized.
That's right.
Great
That's
job,
how
Trey.
mine is.
Look at it this way. There's no shavings draped all over everything.
No, I try to keep the shavings picked up a little bit.
And his Chuck says his bins are well organized. Oh, that's just rough.
Okay. The other thing is they're on wheels and I roll them out of the way.
Oh, good.
I can't do it now because I disconnect the computer, but I just push it out of the way when I don't need it. So.
I was joking with you, but I'm serious. You have the shop I like to have because everything's where I need it at, right there.
Yeah.
And
great tool holders too.